Very good. Okay. So, Gina, thank you. It's not many that would feel comfortable just kind of tossing that ball to you like that, and you did an excellent job. So, worship. So I wonder, when you woke up this morning, did you wake up with a sense of anticipation? That I'm going to go to this gathering this morning, and I'm hopeful, I'm expectant that I'll be stepping into something marvelous, something wonderful, something extraordinary. Well, I hope you did. But I also know that that's probably not the reality for most of us. So being in the position that I'm in, up here, I'm left to wonder. What goes into your decision about, do I go to church today, or do I don't know, you fill in your blank. There's, this time of the year, there's golf, there's gardening, there's shopping, there's a party I've got to get ready for, there's, you fill in that blank. There's sit and do nothing because I've been busy all week. Okay, so you get to decide that, What's your decision? What's your decision-making process? For some, I know, for some it's going to be like, well, if so-and-so's there, man, I really want to see them. And so that'll kind of be that tipping point. And for others, it's like, well, I don't know. I don't know. Am I going to get something out of it today? And, gee, for some of us, it's the music. I'm going to go because of the music, right? And for others, you're going to go, oh, well, man, I'm expecting Gina to knock it out of the park today, and I don't want to miss one of hers, and so I'm going to go today. Or maybe there's one of you that think, we'll see if Pastor Kurt's got anything good to say today. For many, it's habit, right? It's just we wake up and we think, hey, it's Sunday, and I've been doing this, and I'm going to do it today. Now, any and all of those, to one degree or another, they're all good. And Gina spoke eloquently to those. But I really wonder, and dare I say doubt, that those types of anticipations will lead you to a place where you come hoping, anticipating something beautiful, something marvelous, something extraordinary. So I have a hypothesis. It's an observation. You can feel free to disagree. As a denomination, and most local churches, we've become very left-brained. That's our logical side, right? That's the learning side. That's the higher education side. That's where John Wesley was for 35 years of his life. He was born in 1703. When you want to think about the Methodist Church, John Wesley, all you need to do is think about the 1700s, because he came pretty close to bookending them. Born in 1703. It was not until 1738 that he had what many of us know as his heart-warming experience. His heart was strangely warmed. Until then, he was a left brain. Why do you think we're called Methodist? Okay, because that was him. He was order. He was discipline. I mean, his life was rigid. He was fastidious in many things, and one of the things he's fastidious in was keeping his diary, and repeatedly in that diary, prior to that heartwarming experience, he acknowledged, I'm missing something in my life. I'm missing something in my relationship with God. And he would come face to face with that. May 24th, 1738, as he entered Aldersgate, the church on Aldersgate Street there in England, where of all things, Martin Luther's preface to the book of Romans. Now, for me and maybe for you, that would be like picking up the phone directory, okay? It's not really what I think of as inspirational reading. But it was while Martin Luther's preface to the book of Romans was being read that John Wesley said, my life was changed. He had a life-changing encounter with God. Now, Wesley didn't abandon his methodical approach to life. His life in many ways was still a picture of order, but his life was changed. And it's clear to those who given it some thought that many of us are much like Wesley prior to 1738, that we have not only an intellectual bent in our faith, but for many of us, that is the total sum, you might say. That is where we are grounded. That is what we have in terms of our faith journey. That doesn't mean that we don't enjoy some of the various elements. Again, Gina mentioned of what we think of as the traditional journey, faith journey and experience over the years. That's been the liturgy. Liturgy was where the reader would say something and you would respond. The leader would say something, you would respond. The leader would say something, and then you'd all respond together. You notice we don't do that anymore so much, maybe once or twice a year. The liturgy was important. The singing is a part of our faith journey, our faith journey over the year. The music, the sermon. But I'm pretty sure, in fact, I think I can go so far to say I'm confident that many are left short of the heart connection that Wesley had as a result of his experience. Now remember, Wesley was a fervently religious church goer, a religiously fervent church leader, but yet his experience did not take him into the fullness of what he would experience. For over 30 years of his life, he preached. For over 30 years of his life, during those 30 years of his life, he missionaried. That's a word I made up. He was a missionary, But he still experienced what St. Augustine penned as, "You have made us for yourself, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you." I'd be curious to know how many of us have been to a faith gathering where you see an outward expression of that heartfelt connection with God. Now, what does that look like? For some, it's the raising of hands. I mean, we can sing a song, "Let's lift up our hands," and now lift up our hands. I mean, we just are not in that sort of space. For Betsy and I, we were introduced to it first. We worked at Green Giant. Excuse me, I gotta find my water here. We worked at Green Giant, 12 to 12, 7 days a week. And because of that, we needed to find a place to worship. So we ended up at Assembly of God, Rockford, big church, charismatic church. I mean, they were doing it all, laying on the ground, waving the flag, holding the hands. I mean, they were engaged emotionally in their faith journey. Willow Creek, been there many, 50 times probably. Not so much anymore, especially to the conference that I go to there. But over the years, I just in the past couple of months, I was at 2 conferences. And the people at those places were fully engaged in expressing that emotional side, that the depth of their connection with God. And at times I was left going, boy, I wish I had more of that, But there were other times where I can look at something like that and go, boy, I'm not so sure. And I suspect if you've ever seen someone, do that, you can go, well, that feels a little weird. It can be a little destabilizing. It's like walking into people making out, It feels a little intimate. And maybe it feels like I really shouldn't be watching that, So I'd like to suggest that there's something incredibly romantic about worship. Something that lets us know something intimate is taking place. And as we watch it, in other words, that we're not really they're participating in what they're experiencing, but we're watching it from the outside, we might feel mildly or profoundly uncomfortable. Why? Well, I think it's safe to say we've been significantly shaped by the Enlightenment. And one of the effects of that is that information is where it's at, baby. Information is the part that really matters. So what I hope to convey this morning is why worship matters and that it transcends information. Now, I'm sure some of you are way ahead of me and realize that the methodology, in other words, my speaking here to you, that my methodology is at odds or at tension with my intention. So I hope that you'll think with me this morning about why worship matters. Now, I'm moving away from what we're gathering at 9 o'clock, calling that worship. Okay, I'm calling that the gathering. And so if you notice that word worship or even church Sunday morning, I'm going to be moving more and more away from that. I'm going to call this the gathering because worship is something different. Church is clearly something different. Church is people, not a place. So that what happens at 9 o'clock Sunday morning is not worship. That's clockwork, right? We show up. No matter what takes place, 9 o'clock starts what we have traditionally called worship. I'm going to start calling it the gathering. Worship is what took place in John Wesley's heart. So in some sense, while I often say a song or a hymn is aspirational, that's kind of my feeling about this morning's message. In that what I'm hoping to convey and share about need to go far beyond the spoken word. But it begins there as I hope to achieve my intention. So last week as the song leaders were practicing, I pointed out that our hardbound hymnal, that would be this one. You guys all have one of those near you. We don't use it so much anymore. We got words on the screen. But this hardbound hymnal is our historic hymnal. And for the most part, it is songs about God. Almighty fortress is our God, right? Away in a manger, no crib for a bed, right? Christ the Lord is risen today. Okay, those are songs about God, which makes sense to me because basically, maybe all those songs, they are products of the Enlightenment era, right? They came out of the heyday of the Enlightenment, and that's feeding that intellectual, that informational side. The next two hymnals, the first one that came out, The Faith We Sing, the second one, the Green Worship and Song, lean much more heavily into songs to God rather than songs about God. Exclusively? No, and that's not, it's not to say that there aren't some songs in the first hymnal as well. In fact, the first two songs in the second hymnal are We Sing to You, O God. Couldn't be any clearer. That says, we're singing to you, O God. I will call upon the Lord. That the third song finally is, yes, where's the title here? Yes, it is called Praise You. It's a song that really is attempting to move us into that direct communication with God. Or 2025 in the Black Hymnal. As the Deer is the title. There is You alone are my heart's desire. Right? To You alone may my spirit yield. So when we sing these songs, the intention for them is for the singer to feel that we are in direct communication with the Holy One. Now we can sing a song like As the Deer and still be completely removed from any sense of entering the presence of God. Absolutely. We can sing songs that have the words, but not be there. We can sing those songs because we as a singer have to want, and guys, I think I goofed up and didn't give you, so we're going to be that fly in here, okay? So we as a singer have to want and have the attitude of intentionality, okay? That intentionality is what opens the door to the possibility of our entering into that space. Because we can sing the words, but if our heart doesn't desire it, then it's not going to happen. So a second factor that allows us to sing with a sense of entering into the presence of the holy would be a sense of familiarity, right? So in the past 3 or 4 months, as I mentioned, I've attended a couple conferences, and at each there were easily 500, at one easily 1,000. And I may have been the oldest one there. At the one, I think I clearly was. Fortunately, the keynote speaker is only a couple of years younger than me, so I felt fine. So they were singing their songs that led them into the presence of the Holy One. And I was watching, right? At first. Sometimes I eventually got caught up into it. And how did that happen? Because of repetition, which has been one of the historic knocks on what is sometimes referred to as worship music. Oh, it's so repetitive. Yeah, and there's a reason for that. Because we can't enter into the personal space, the sacred space, into the presence of the Holy One if we find ourselves floundering with the music, right? If we don't know the music, it just can't happen. It's as the music, as the notes become a part of what feels easy to us, that we can then move into that sacred space and move into that sense of the holy. Now, another knock on worship music is its simplicity. And I would say again, the same reason. It's attempting to help us get past the music and into a sacred, sensed presence of God, where in essence we find ourselves singing love songs to the creator of the universe. So as we read our sacred text, old and new, I think it becomes clear that we're wired for worship. That doesn't mean that we drop our brain off at the coat check, but we're designed for worship. We were created to live in this transcendent space where you and God connect, where God becomes more than just something we engage in from our intellectual, our left brain side. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with that. But where we embrace the fullness of our relationship with God, and because we embrace the fullness of our relationship with God, God becomes then the source, as Tilly calls it, the source, the ground of our being, our principal reality. So our lesson for today, Joshua, chapter 6. We saw it on the screen there today. The gates of Joshua have been securely barred, and they were at war with the Israelites. And outside the city, Joshua meets the Lord, this angelic being, who says, "I've delivered Jericho into your hands, and the king, and all of his fighting men. And I want you to march around the city once with all your men. Do this for 6 days. And I want you to have 6 priests." 6 priests carrying the ram's horn in front of the ark. On the 7th day, you're going to march around the city 7 times, blowing the trumpets. When you hear on the 7th day, after the 7th journey around, you're going to blow the horn, and the walls are going to come tumbling down. And the army will be able to enter. So they're instructed. They do as they're instructed. The trumpet sounds, the army shouts, the wall collapses, and they take the city. So that's an epic moment in history. But as we know, that's not a great military strategy. But God wasn't trying to teach them military strategy. In fact, I don't think the strategy was ever used ever again. No one has ever, decided that, hey, I heard this one time in the Old Testament, they march around the city for 7 days, and then they, on the 7th day, the 7th time, then no one has ever said that they want to do that, because God wasn't teaching them about military prowess. God was teaching them about the power of worship. So God takes them into this moment of conflict, of real war, real weapons, real death, and says, I want you to take the Ark of the Covenant, which is the promise of the presence of God, And I want you to have the seven priests, along with the seven trumpets, walking around the city, letting everyone know that you're there. And it's like, that's not a really good strategy. Because usually you try to sneak up on a fortified city, right? You try to sneak up on a fortified city, and you try to find a way to sneak in, and then you get the gates open, and then you charge in. And Jericho on the inside was probably, they're thinking, well, what? We got to watch out for those Israelites. We know they're coming to get us. Be sure to look. And all of a sudden, they're marching around the city. Here we are. We're going to circle your city. So they circled it. And so they get back to camp. You know, these guys, they're itching for a fight. They're itching for a battle. Day one, they're like, come on, we want to go get them. And they're like, no, not today. Rinse and repeat. Days 3, 4, 5, 6. They circle the city, declaring God is here. Anything, the army of Jericho, you must have thought, we're going to die of monotony. These guys just keep walking around, keep blowing these horns, carrying that weird-looking thing down there. What kind of an exercise of futility is this? But they circled the city that seventh time on the seventh day. They gave out a loud shout, declared the greatness of God and the wonder of God. Well, who does such a thing? God. To prove what? That worship is what powers us. That's why we worship God. So then we can watch the walls around us fall down. Worship is life-giving, transforming. You know, we can't come into the presence of God and remain unchanged. We're different than the animals. We're different than the baboons or the cheetahs. We're designed to live in communion with the creator of the universe, to be connected to the one who is infinite. And my words can't take you there. My experience can't take you there. And I really do feel like the longer we live apart from that experience, the more comfortable we get living apart from that experience. And that part that longs for us, in some way, I think, starts to shrivel. We were created in the image of God, and for the fullness of life, we need to connect to that which is infinite, to that which is eternal. See, worship is not the act of coming here. Worship restores us to our original state of being connected to the creator of the universe. It opens our souls so we can experience God's love. So I don't know where you're at in that whole journey, but I know for many, we as good Methodists, we've become very left-brained. And my hope, and I want to talk some more about this next week, is that we can explore, there are various ways that we come into the presence. But I do think it's powerful, and it's life-changing. It's really the secret sauce. It's what allows people to look at our life and go, hey, she's really different. I know she's got all these pressures in her life, but still somehow she just feels different. She acts different. She carries herself different. Or that guy, man, I would hope that guy would marry my daughter because there's something about that guy. And those type of people are the people who are grounded. Those people are in connection, not just to a space and not just to a time, but connected to the Holy One. And that's my prayer for every one of us. So, oh Lord, hear our prayers. Because I know for many of us, it's routine. It's it's habit, it's a lot of things, but Lord, for many of us, we would long for that connection where we, like Wesley, might say, I had my heart strangely warmed. I felt something in the presence of the living God that is refreshing, that is reviving, that is renewing, that will sustain me in the midst of my life. May that be all of our prayers, offered up in the name of the one who alone is worthy of our worship, Jesus the Christ. Amen.